We picture Rome dying in a single day of fire. Flaming cities, screaming mobs, marble statues crashing to the ground. We want the collapse to be loud. We want it to be obvious. But that's the myth. The reality was quieter, colder. Rome didn't break because a barbarian horde stormed the gates. It broke because of the internal machinery. It simply stopped working. First, the money dissolved. Silver coins were shaved down into junk metal that couldn't buy a loaf of bread. Then the borders went silent. Watchtowers along the Rhine were left empty, signal fires going dark one by one. Finally, the power fractured. Generals in Gaul and Palmyra stopped taking orders and built their own empires while Rome still pretended to rule the map. Here's the truth. Empires don't die of murder. They die of suicide. For decades, Rome kept the map together with threats and inertia. But deep down, the connection was already gone. The Gallic Empire in the west and the Palmyrene Empire in the east didn't create the divide. They just made it official. They proved that you can have the same flag, the same laws, and the same name. But if you don't have a shared reality, you don't have a country. Rome broke into three because the center had nothing left to offer. Watch closely, because that same center is dissolving right now. Welcome back to The Roman Pattern. I'm your host, Jeremy Ryan Slate, CEO of Command Your Brand. We help our clients to appear on some of the biggest podcasts in the world. Check us out via the link in the description. And now, our story. To understand the suicide, we have to look at the moment that the heart stopped beating. The year is 260 AD. The patient is the Roman Empire, a superorganism that has spanned the Mediterranean for centuries. But if you look at the vital signs in 260, the patient is already clinically dead. The psychological break happens in the east. The Emperor Valerian, the man who calls himself master of the world, is not sitting on the throne. He's on his hands and knees in the dust of Edessa. He's being used as a human footstool by the Persian king Shapur to mount his horse. This is not just a military defeat. It's a metaphysical collapse. For 500 years, the Roman brand was invincibility. The deal was simple. You pay taxes, you obey the laws, and in exchange, Rome is the eternal victor. But in the world that sees the emperor in chains, the spell breaks. The power fault line snaps instantly. The central government in Rome is revealed to be a fraud. It can demand your loyalty, but it can no longer guarantee your safety. And this is where the pattern begins to accelerate. In a healthy system, a crisis rallies the nation together. In a dying system, a crisis is the signal to loot the wreckage. Look to the west first, the Rhine frontier. This is the bleeding edge of the empire, where the legions hold back the Germanic tribes. For years, the soldiers have been paid in coins that are becoming lighter, darker, and more worthless every month. The money fault line is vibrating. The central government, panicked by the disaster in the east, strips the Rhine of its best troops. They leave the back door open. The German tribes, the Alemanni, and the Franks pour across the river. They burn farms, they sack cities, and they carry off Roman citizens by the thousands. The people of Gaul, which is modern-day France and Belgium, send desperate pleas to Rome. Send help, send legions, send silver. But Rome sends nothing. Rome is paralyzed, fighting its own civil wars, consumed by its own palace intrigues. The center is too busy eating itself to care about the limbs. So a general named Postumus makes a calculation. It is the same calculation every separatist movement in history eventually makes. He realizes the connection to Rome is no longer an asset. It's a liability. Being Roman means paying taxes to a city that lets your children burn. Postumus doesn't march on Rome to become the new emperor. This is the crucial detail that historians often gloss over, but is the key to the pattern. In the past, generals fought to rule the whole empire. Postumus doesn't want to rule the whole thing. He looks at Italy with its corruption, its debt, and its starving mobs, and says, keep it. He creates the Gallic Empire. Gaul, Britain, and Spain break away. But they don't revert to barbarism. This is the terrifying part for the central state. They run a better Rome than Rome does. Postumus sets up his own senate, his own praetorian guard, and crucially, his own mint. He issues coins that are purer than the trash coming out of the imperial mint in Rome. His coins declare him Restitutor Gallium, the restorer of Gaul. He is telling the people, I am doing the job that the ghost in Italy can no longer do. This is the first law of the breakdown. Sovereignty is a service. If the central state stops providing the service of protection and stable money, the periphery will find someone who can. The map didn't change because of an invasion. It changed because the contract was voided. While the West amputates itself to survive, the East is becoming privatized. After Valerian is captured, the Roman army in the East is effectively decapitated. The Persians are surging forward, ready to swallow Syria and maybe even Egypt. The border's fault line is gone. There is no border. Into this vacuum steps a man named Odaenathus. He is a prince of Palmyra, a wealthy trading city in the Syrian desert. Palmyra is a strange place. It's Roman, but if it's not of Rome, it's a merchant city built on the flow of silk and spice. They understand money. They understand that stability is good for business. Odaenathus looks at the shattered Roman legions and realizes he cannot wait for orders that will never come. He mobilizes his own private army. He uses Palmyrene archers and heavy cavalry, the cataphracts. He doesn't ask for permission. He marches straight into the Persian fire, and he wins. He drives the Persians back. He saves the Roman East. But here's where the power fault line shifts permanently. Rome, in its weakness, has no choice but to thank him. They give him the title Corrector Totius Orentis, corrector of the whole East. It's a bureaucratic way of saying, we can't rule this anymore, so you do it. For a few years it works, but then Odaenathus is assassinated. Another murder in a time of murders. His power passes to his wife, Zenobia. If Postumus was the pragmatic separatist, Zenobia is the visionary rival. She looks at the money fault line and sees the truth. Rome is bankrupt. Its currency is debased. Its trade routes are infested with bandits. Palmyra, however, is rich. Zenobia stops sending tax revenue to Rome. Why should she? She's the one securing the borders. She's the one keeping the trade flowing. She begins to annex territory not as a conqueror, but as a stabilizer. She takes Egypt, the breadbasket of the empire. When she takes the grain, she grabs Rome by the throat. This is the moment the pattern becomes undeniable. The Roman Empire is now three separate entities. The Gallic Empire in the west, a military junta focused on border defense. The Palmyrene Empire in the east, a commercial superpower controlling the wealth and the food. The Central Empire, a hollowed-out rump state in the middle, controlling nothing but the name Rome and rapidly devaluing its currency. Let's take a look at the center. The Emperor Gallienus is left holding the bag. He's often blamed for this fracture, but that's unfair. He's simply the man standing in the room when the roof collapses. He tries to fight inflation by printing more money, which only accelerates the death spiral. The Antoninianus, the silver coin of the soldiers, is now 95% bronze with a thin silver wash. Soldiers are paid in coins that literally lose their shine after a few weeks of handling. The money fault line has cracked wide open. The state is stealing from its own defenders to pay its own debts. Because the money is worthless, the soldiers lose their loyalty. Because the soldiers lose their loyalty, the borders fall. Because the borders fall, the tax base shrinks. Because the tax base shrinks, the money is debased even further. It is a perfect self-reinforcing loop of doom. The citizens of the Central Empire are trapped. They look west to Gaul and see stability. They look east to Palmyra and see prosperity. And they look at Rome and see a vampire, a capital city that demands everything and gives nothing. This state of affairs lasts for nearly 15 years. A generation grows up knowing a world where Rome is just a regional power, not the master of the world. It takes a man of extraordinary violence to stitch it back together. His name is Aurelian. He is the Restutor Orbis, the restorer of the world. And make no mistake, he's not a diplomat. He is a blunt instrument. He marches east and smashes Zenobia's armies. He marches west and forces the Gallic emperor to surrender. In 4 years, he recolors the map. He brings the 3 pieces back into one. Historians cheer this moment. They call it the recovery. But under the autopsy lens, we see the scarring. Aurelian reunites the empire, but he changes the nature of the deal. He realizes that the old Rome, the open, confident, civilian-led Rome, is dead. To keep this Franken-state together, he has to turn it into a prison. He builds the Aurelian walls around the city of Rome itself. Think about that. Symbolism. For 600 years, Rome had no walls because its defense was the fear it inspired in others. Now that fear is gone. The walls are an admission that the enemy is no longer at the frontiers. The enemy is everywhere. He reforms the currency, but only by brutally suppressing the minters who were stealing the silver. He centralizes power so tightly that the emperor becomes a god. Dominus et Deus, Lord and God. You no longer salute the emperor, you worship him. This is the diagnosis of the corpse. The Rome that broke into 3 pieces in 260 AD never really came back. The map was fixed, but the soul was gone. The breakdown revealed the truth about centralized systems. When they overextend, when they debase their currency to pay for their mistakes, and when they fail to secure their own borders, they lose the moral right to rule. The Gallic and Palmyrene empires were not anomalies. They were antibodies. They were the natural reaction of healthy societies trying to protect themselves from a dying host. And here lies the pattern for us today. We look at our own maps and assume they're permanent. We assume that because a capital city claims authority, it possesses authority. But the 3rd century proves that political unions are fragile. They're held together by a shared belief in the money, the economic future, the borders, the common defense, and the power, the legitimacy of law. When the money becomes a lie, when the borders become a suggestion, and when the power becomes a game of looting the treasury, the map doesn't just change. It shatters. Rome broke into 3 because the people living in Gaul and Palmyra realized they could survive better alone than they could survive together. It wasn't a murder, it was a divorce. And if you listen closely to the news today, you can hear the papers being signed all over again. This has been The Roman Pattern. I'm Jeremy Ryan Slate. Please like this video, leave us a comment, and smash the subscribe button if you want more of The Roman Pattern.